Hi, my name is Tokwe. Welcome to Read Code TV, my YouTube channel, where we go through libraries from different programming languages so we can learn more about these languages and also learn techniques we can use in our own code. Please support us by subscribing to the channel and sharing this video. The first library we shall be going through is a very simple library called Merge-Descriptors. As you can see here from its npm page, had over 33 million downloads, over 7 million this past week. And for a library that is downloaded so much, it's not that popular. But if we check its dependence, you'll find out why it has been downloaded so much. 299 dependents. That means libraries that use this framework. And number one in the list is Express. Everybody that does Node.js development in one form or the other has come across Express. I would use it. It is very popular, and apart from that, there are 265 libraries that use this Merge descriptor library. So it's a very good candidate for our first library on the channel we shall go through. As you can see from the name, it's called Merge-Descriptors, and it simply says here that it is used to merge objects using descriptors. Before we look into the library itself, let's look at the word descriptors. Let's look at what are descriptors in JavaScript. I'm going to make this channel a very practical channel. So we're going to be looking at code a lot, reading documentation a lot, but also I believe that it's a good way for us to learn some fundamental basics of any language we are dealing with. So what are descriptors? Every property in JavaScript is not simply a name and a value pair, but they all have descriptors. So let me give you that example. I've opened my console now. Let's look at animal. You can say let's use a pet. Pet be equals to type of pet. So it's a dog. So this is a property called of this object pet type dog. And then let's give it another property. Let's call, what's the name? Dog. Let's call it Jack. Yes. So very simple. There's nothing. If we put pet there, we get our object pet. So but as I said, every property in a JavaScript object is not just simply the name value pair, but it also has descriptors. To check descriptor of a property of an object, what you just need to do is to do object get own property descriptor. It's a function, and it simply takes the name of the object, in this case pet, and then the property you want to find that descriptor for. So the property we want is type. So what we are saying is that get own property descriptor. One of the things that we do in this channel is to leave the link for the Mozilla development network for each of these functions, so that after you can go there and read more about these functions, but we'll just show you how they work here. So now you can see that here we have 4 objects. It brings out an object with we have an object with 4 properties. These properties are called descriptors. When I said every property of an object has descriptors, this is what I mean. The first one obviously is the value. That one doesn't need no explanation. The value of the type object property of the object pet is dog, meaning the value that you put inside. The next three values are writable, enumerable, and configurable. Now you, by default, they are all true. So if you set up an object in the normal fashion, which is the using the equal sign or the other ways we do it in JavaScript, by default your writable is going to be true, your enumerable is going to be true, and your configurable is going to be true for all properties of such object. So what we're going to do is going to describe what those properties are, and I think they are simply straightforward. Writable, obvious. Writable means that the value indicated for the property, whether it can be changed or not. If it is true, that means it can be changed. If it is false, meaning that it cannot be changed. To change the, okay, now we see that the property here is true. To change this property to false, there's another function we need to know, which is object define property. What this function does is, number one, you can use define new functions, a new property for the object easily, and you can also use it to edit properties of objects. Also, we want to change the descriptor writable for the type property of this object. I'll take that again. We want to change the write descriptor property, which is this, to false for the type property of the object pet. I think that's it. So how do you do that? There's a property called object. There's a function called object define property. Now this can be used to define new properties of an object, or edit the descriptor of a property of an object. So in this case, we want to edit the descriptor of the type property of the pet object. So the way we do that is that we put in the first parameter is the object, which in this case is pet. The second parameter is the property, which is the type, and then the last is an object where we put in the descriptor we want to change. In this case, it is writable. I want to turn it to false. So that should do. So if we check the property again, object get descriptor property, get own descriptor property, get own property descriptor, sorry, that we checked before. If we check it now, writable is now false. It was true before, now it is now false. Now, as we said, this determines whether you can change the value of an object, of the property of the object. So example, since this is on the type, let's try to change the type of the dog, the type of the property. So, and let's change it to a wolf. Does that work? Let's see. Let's type pet and let's see whether that works. As you can see, even though we changed it to a wolf here, when we echo the property, the object pet, type is still dog, because now writable is false. Writable is false. So that is why we cannot change the property, the value of this property type, because the writable for this property is false. Obviously, I told you by default the writable is true. So if we want to change the name, which is still true by default since we didn't change it before, let's call our dog Bingo, and let's echo pet again, and we see yes, the name has changed. That's because the writable property, the writable descriptor for the name property is true by default. So that is the writable property. Okay, so let's clear console and let's look at the next property. Sorry, the next descriptor, which is the enumerable. Enumerable is a descriptor that determines whether you can loop over a certain property A of an object. So when I mean by loop over certain property, what I mean is this. Let's go back to our pet. What the present value of our pet is dog, type dog Bingo. If I do this for I in pet, if I write a for loop and I just console.log and I do I, what this does basically is to loop over the property of the object and echo them out and send them to console. So if we do this, you can see we have both type and name, which are the two property name of the object. So but if you want to stop a property from being shown, being enumerated over, or as the descriptor says, enumerable, you just turn it, enumerable descriptor, to false. And as usual, the way we do that, as we have found out before, is to do object define property, object define property, and that is what object is that? We have pet. What's okay, let's do the type. Okay, let's do the name. We've used type a lot, so let's use the name. Then in the last object is enumerable. We are turning it to false for the name property of the pet object. So if we want to check that it's false, we just do object get on descriptor. Again, you put the object name and then you put the property name. In this case, it's name. So if you do this, as you can see, enumerable is false. Enumerable is false. So let's run our for loop again. Let's just go up this again, and as you can see, sorry, I made a mistake there. As you can see, it's only showing type. Unlike when we first ran it, as I told you, every descriptor property, enumerable, writable, or configurable are true by default. So now that's why we could do enumerate over the property name like this. But when we turned it to false, you can see that now only type is showing, because now name enumerable false. So that's what the enumerable descriptor does to an object property. The last property we're going to look at is called configurable. By default, it is true. Now you see the effect of the configurable majorly when it is false. When it is false, you can't change enumerable. When configurable is false, you can't change enumerable, and you cannot even change configurable itself. So the configurable, it has three effects. You won't be able to change enumerable. If configurable is false, you won't be able to change enumerable. You won't be able to change configurable itself. That means you can't change it to true. And finally, you cannot delete that property of the object. So let's take an example. like that. So we know that anywhere configurable here is true. So let's just object define property, as I said, pet name, and we set configurable. The last object, let's go configurable is false. Okay, so what does this, so let's check the define property now, descriptor, so that we can see the descriptor. You can see that configurable is false, enumerable is false. Number one effect of that is that if I want to change the enumerable property, define property, and I do okay for pets, for name, the name property of the pet object, and then we do this. So we say we want to change the enumerable, it is false. Now we want to change it to true. Enumerable, that is true. If we do this, we get an error. Cannot redefine property name at function this. The reason for that is this, because configurable is false. Now the second effect of configurable being false is that you cannot even change configurable itself. So let's change it, configurable back to true. As you can see, we get another error because you cannot change the configurable descriptor itself once it is false. So you can't, when this configurable is false, you can't change configurable and you can't change enumerable from whatever value the enumerable was. Now the last one, which does not have to do with descriptor but has to do with the property value itself. The property itself is that you cannot delete a property whose configurable descriptor is false. So now we know that name is false. So if we do this, delete pet, and we say name, we get false. If we throw the object now, we still get name, bingo. But if we do delete dot pet dot type, we get true, and when we check pet, it only has bingo. The reason why you can't delete this the name property is because of configurable. So you now know about value, you know about writable, you know about enumerable, you know about configurable, you know about the define property function, you know about get on this, because this will be useful for us inside the library. So now let's set up our library project. What we do is to set up like a new folder, open a new folder. So this is going to put everything inside the read code project. So let's do this. Let's call it Merge-Descriptor video. So let's use that to define that, and we open that in VS Code. So for JavaScript I use VS Code a lot. Okay, so let's open this up. Okay, let's open the console, the inbuilt terminal, and let's just do npm init. Let's just accept everything that way. Okay, yes. Now we have this first thing first, let's go back to our merge descriptor, get the command we need. So this, we do this. And we remember to put save npm. Okay, so that's done. That is done. So the next thing now is just to put an index file where we put our initial example so that we can use that to trace back into the library. So, and also show use cases. So const merge is equals to require merge descriptor. So let's use the same example we have been using. Let's text be equals to type dog and name let's call it bingo. So the next, let's use our second object, the object we want to merge into this. What can we call it? Let's call it an animal, and we say type a cat wolf, and let's put one that is not there, carnivorous. Did I get that correctly? I hope so. Carnivorous is true. Carnivorous is true. So the next thing is, okay, let's merge. While we are merging, we want to merge animal into pet. Let's do it like this first, then we'll come back and edit it. So let's see whether this works. If it works, we're going to do console.log to show that it works. We're going to do console.log pet before we start, and after we do console.log, and that is pet2 again. So I'm simply following the example here, which says that, okay, you put animal, you merge here the object, the destination object, and then the object you want to merge into it. This is how you put them. So this is just the example I'm following. We'll use that to trace into the code. Let's just see if it works first. So what you do, let's clear. So instead of doing, we just do node and we do index.js. As you can see from here, before merging it was correct, we have dog bingo. After merging we have wolf. You can see the wolf has taken over the dog here because they are the same, so we are merging this, so it takes, if they are properties similar, it merges over them. Carnivore has been added, to it. So this is it. So this shows that the library works. So then now let's go into the library and see the code of the library itself, how it works. So very simple, we can just control click into that. This one will take us into the TS library, but that's not what we need. Let's just, very simple, we can just open node module and we see the Merge-Descriptor library, and we can see that it has only one JS file, which is what we need to see. So let's do that. Let's close space to get enough space. Okay, so obviously they are using use strict mode. I don't need to tell you what use strict mode does. It makes all majorly silent errors to become loud. So errors that would have silently that the JavaScript engine would have silently taken care of, it allows you to know about errors that would have been silently taken care of. So that's what usestrict does in simple format. So we can look at that. I can create another video for that. One of the things you see here immediately is that there is only one thing being exported out of this library, which is merge. So let's find out. Merge is down here. Merge is down here. So merge is a function. This is the only thing, and that's the merge function we are using here. So it's the only thing being exported from the library, and that's, so we just required it and got it straight here. So what we are getting there is a function, not a class. We're getting a function out of there. So what first of all, let's look at the function merge itself. Let's see what the comment says. The comment says merge the property descriptor of source into destination, DEST. So let's look at the parameters. This destination object to add the parameters to. The source is where you want to get your descriptors from, as it says, the source object to clone descriptors from. And then we didn't see this in our example. What it does is that it determines if it is true. You are defining destination properties with the source property, meaning that if there is a property in the destination like this, like what we have here, that has the same name, if there's a property in the source and destination that is the same, if we define is true, the source property will overwrite the destination property. That's what the same thing means, and then it returns a reference to the destination object. So this is what one of the things you can see here is how clean the comments are and how easy it is to understand. So the first thing we see here is that we are checking destination object to see whether it's available. This is something you do in JavaScript, because JavaScript does not enforce parameters like some other languages do. So we check whether destination object is there. If it's not there, we throw a type error. You can see this is a specific type of error which used to check whether the parameter contains the expected value we want from it. So whenever you're writing your own code and you want to say, okay, we expect this value to come in as a parameter, you can throw a type error message and everybody will know that that's what you are trying to pass along, and an expected value is not there. So type error, throw new type error, argument destination is required. When we check destination, we're fine with that. We check the source because we need both a destination and a source. We need to merge one object into another object. So we throw another type error which is similar to this, which says argument source is required. Then this brings us to the redefined property that I spoke about. The line says that if we define is undefined, meaning that like we did here, we didn't pass or we define here in our merge function. We could have done this, but it simply says that if it is not, we could have done this and say true and say false, but it's not compulsory. If your value is true, instead of writing true like this, you can just remove it and not describe it, and then what happens is that we define will be undefined, and when we define this undefined, we change it to true. So it's like giving it a default value of true. This is how you give a default value of true to an undefined parameter. So so now we define it true whenever this is on the undefined. Then this brings us to the crux of the matter. We look at this. We get the property names, of the source object. So what we are doing is to get the property names of the source object. When I mean by property names of source object, let's go back to the console. So console, let's boy be equals to first name JJ, J last name Tom, J Tom. So that's property one. So when we do object get on property names, and we do this, let's do boy. So what we are doing, you can see this gives us an array of two elements, which are the names of the properties of the object. So when you want to get the names of property, you use get on property names. Let's go back to code. So here we are getting the property names of the source object. Remember, the source object is the object we want to merge into the destination, and for each of these property, that means we are going through them one by one. For each of these property, we run this function for each property name. This name is each of those properties. So now if you had two property like first name and last name, you first put first name, then you put last name. So for each name of the property, we run this if clause, and what this if clause is that if we define is false, because it will only call the other part if we define it false. That means we don't want it to redefine. That means we are passing, we define false into redefine, and then we don't want it to redefine. We don't want a property that exists in the source to overwrite the same property name that exists in the destination. We don't want that. Now if you don't want that, we check whether that every property name that comes across exists in destination. If it exists, this as on property call means that okay, we want to check whether property exists in the library. That's what that as on property means. It means that does this property exist in the, now you can see, let's click on that, let's control click on that. It takes us to this as on property is actually a reference to this function which says object dot adds on property. So this is the real property here, adds on property. This property checks whether a function has, whether an object has a particular property. So if I use that in an example to show you, inspect, so let's do boy. So let's now do, okay, so boy has own property. We want to check whether it has a property for the first name. Oh, I spelled it wrongly. You can see that, so let me correct that. First name. So it's true. If it has that property, it is true. If it doesn't have it, like the mistake I made here in the name, it is false. So what this is saying, has own property is a reference to this method has own property. So what is happening here is that we'll call object that has own property with this on this object. It is called on this function is called on this object, and then with this parameter. So what we are doing is the object, the function is called on this object with this parameter. That's what the call means. That's what the call means. The object we call on this object with this parameter. So it's like calling destination dot has own property name. Now if this is true, we skip because we don't want to replace it if this is false. If it is true, if we define it's true, we just go through because we don't care whether it is in the destination or not. Everything in the source will override anything of the same name in the descriptor. That is what we define does. Now what this does, that now we've seen this property, we've seen this function a lot, which is that object get own descriptor from the source object with the name, the property name. When we get the descriptor of that property name, as we see earlier, to define that same property in the destination, we use the object define property. We put destination as the destination of the object with the property name and with the same descriptor. So what this does is that it creates the same property in the destination but with the same descriptor. That is how this library merges. So it goes through the loop until it goes through all the property of this object and adds it to the destination. That is how the merge is done in this library. It is done using descriptor, it gets its own descriptor, and then it adds to the object, and then it returns the destination object. Very simple library. As I say again, it checks, let me go through it again. It checks the destination, throws a type error, which is a particular type of error. Source, when the parameter you expect is not what it is. Source, it checks the source. If it's not there, it throws an error. Then it checks if we define is defined or is undefined. If it is defined, you continue. If it is undefined, it's given a value true. Here we loop, we get the property names of the source object. We go by it in loop for each loop, and then we run this property here. We run this property here for all the property names. Now when we go through each property name, we check if we define is true or false. If it is true, meaning that we want to overwrite whatever is in the destination that has the same name as the source, we want to override that property. Then we just go on to doing the copy. But if it is false, meaning that we have to check whether this property name from the source is also in the destination object. If it's in destination object, we skip, meaning that we return and then we go to the next object, the property name. The next thing is that, as I said, you get the descriptor and then you create a new property using the define property object method. So this is the merge library, a very simple but well used library that uses descriptors of objects in JavaScript to merge objects. So descriptors of properties of objects to merge objects. So let's take more examples to show that. We've said, okay, let's put this one as false, meaning that we don't want it to merge. What will be the output? Let's open our terminal. This was it when it was before, meaning that there was nothing. This was it. Now let's run node index.js again, and we see, what do we see? The type is still dog, unlike before. Why? Because now we are telling, we have set redefine to false, and we are saying do not overwrite any property with the same name in the destination, and that's what it did here. Now let's take another example. Let's put a function in this. Let's say what can we, okay, let's say sound, and we just do this. Return or so we have that. So we've added a function to animal. Let's see what it will do. And you can see that function is added to the destination object, which in this case is pet. Why is this so? Because no matter what value a property has, it is still a value and will be passed on to the destination. So you can see, no matter the complexity of the object, whether it contains object name, value pairs, functions, other objects, it will always get added from the source to the destination easily. That's what makes this library very, very robust, and it's something that we should be using in our code. Thank you for following me on this first video of the Read Code TV. Please remember to subscribe and leave your comments and suggestions on other libraries you feel we should cover. Follow us on Twitter and other social media platforms. Thank you.